somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again. You just come after her.
Video games have always been a sort of escape for me. When I was young, I used to play them to relax and get away from having to do any after-school homework. Mainly playing Nintendo games since I grew up with a Wii. This console never had any third-party games that were very strong on it, so I was stuck with first-party Nintendo games through most of my youth. Such games were Mario Kart, Zelda, and Animal Crossing. These games kept my mind busy and stopped me from becoming bored after school or on a weekend. I never got to play any of the larger games that everyone was enjoying, such as Call of Duty and others, until much more recently. As I got older, these games still comforted me. Playing Animal Crossing late at night was a joy after school. These games were all I thought about. I wanted to be right back in them. Be it exploring a kingdom as a plumber, or finding new items in the vast blue oceans of the Wind Waker, my mind was more focused on the worlds and gameplay of these games. I had always had an obsession with games with larger open worlds to explore, so I could come back and find something new to share with my friends the next day. I even still like to do this now with games such as Breath of the Wild and Death Stranding. The open world approach was always my favourite. I had been playing linear games for most of my life at this point, being around 11 or 12. All I played was Nintendo, and all their games were very simple: get from point A to B. I had heard stories from others playing games like Assassin's Creed and others with much larger open worlds to explore. My views on games at this point was that they were just meant to be fun and not have a real impact on you at all. Of course these games were near and dear to my heart, and I enjoyed playing them for years, but I never realised I wanted something more from them until one particular game changed that for me. The Last of Us was first revealed in 2012 with a somewhat generic trailer with two characters being revealed. These turned out to be the two main characters in the game released the following year, Joel and Ellie. When I first saw this trailer, I thought it would be another generic open world survival game that I wouldn't be interested in. This view made me wait several years before giving the game a chance, and when I did, I felt very wrong with my first opinion. The game was made by Naughty Dog, who were famous for Crash Bandicoot and Jak Daxter. These previous titles were most likely how I got my first impressions of what the game might be, due to the latter games not being very strong, heavy story games, but platformers meant for light enjoyment and sometimes hard challenges. I never played the game because, for one, I didn't have a PS3 at the time of release, and I was also not interested. I ended up trying out some PS3 games, such as the Metal Gear Solid franchise. These were fun and extremely complicated, but I never knew I wanted something more meaningful and heartfelt, and turned on The Last of Us for the first time. When I was expecting a normal survival horror game, I was met with something much more memorable, and a story that would stick with me for a long time. The story follows two survivors in the apocalypse, the first of which we meet is Joel, who is tasked with getting a young girl named Ellie to the Fireflies, a rebel organisation who wish to find a cure for the outbreak. We find out that Ellie herself is the cure that humanity has needed due to her immunity to the virus. The premise of the story is very simple, but it is the journey itself and the changes that we see within both characters that make these two the best protagonists I've ever seen.
You have no idea what loss is.
Joel is the main protagonist who we play as throughout the game. Though he's not the first character we play as, the first 20 minutes or so of the game have us playing as Joel's daughter, Sarah. We play through her perspective as she witnesses the start of the outbreak. This makes us feel defenceless as a small girl like Sarah could not protect herself from the brutal killers that the zombies are. This is where we first see Joel spring into action and kill his first zombie, showing that he will do anything to protect the ones he loves, even something as immoral as killing another living being, or once living. Our control is then taken away from the character as we see her travelling in a car with her father and uncle. This is as little as we know the last time we will ever control the character, as she is soon after sadly killed. This impacts both the player and most importantly Joel. We then skip 20 years even further into the outbreak and witness Joel having a rude awakening from a nap, most likely remembering the events we just saw unfold. This is when we see the completely different side of Joel. Instead of the loving father who would do anything for his daughter we saw before, he is now a hard and cynical individual who only cares for his own survival. We see him suffer from survivor's guilt, and his outlook to others is no longer caring and as kind as it once was, but instead he is very wary and harsh to others he does not know. Joel is now another scavenger who has been forced to adapt to his new life in this horrible situation the world is in, ripped of any emotion and made to do anything just to get by day to day. Ellie and Joel's relationship is the most crucial part of the entire game. Without these two bonding with each other during the long journey, we would be left with a subpar zombie thriller story that wouldn't have any weight behind it. Ellie is introduced to us as just an objective to get to the Fireflies with Tess, Joel's scavenger partner saying, "She's just cargo, Joel." This shows us how little she means to anyone at the very beginning of their journey. Joel is even hesitant to bring her to the Fireflies as he doesn't want to risk his own life, but in reality, her life either. To everyone in the room, she's just another kid that needs protection that can't look after herself. Ellie shows us what growing up in the new world is like. She's also a glimmer of hope, both from her immunity but her young innocence. She sees everything in a more hopeful way, and that is what impacts Joel's outlook once more. She becomes a stand-in daughter to replace Sarah, as we see him start to care for her more and more, even trusting her with guns to protect him with, and eventually Ellie even saves Joel's life. This bonding between the two was unlike anything I'd ever seen from video game characters before, and is still to be beat in my opinion. Ellie's whole life view is changing the most significant part of her and Joel's relationship. This is the winter portion of the game, and also through the character of David, a cannibal who threatens her life and kidnaps her. David himself is the embodiment of what this chaos can do to someone. He's the worst example of what someone can become. Ellie has never seen anyone this destructive and dangerous in her journey yet. It's through his actions that Ellie learns the true nature of humanity. David kidnaps Ellie and keeps her locked up, attempting to make her join him. She manages to escape, but through the harsh battle she has with him, we find out his true intentions were even worse than just having her join him. It is this intention that makes Ellie much more skeptical, as her childlike innocence is ripped away at this part of the game. The choice to make us play as Joel through this massacre of the Fireflies was a smart choice, as we now see him as at most destructive. But he is no longer killing just to survive, he is killing to keep the one thing he loves in his life, the purpose for him to keep living, that is Ellie. Fireflies were never made out to be the enemies of this game. Joel shows his morality as we control him. We have no say in this matter, as my thoughts were in line with what Joel was doing. I wanted to save Ellie at all costs, and this made the moment that more impactful. As Joel killed these rebels that were trying to do something good for humanity, I never thought about their point of view, but Joel's at all times. This was due to the excellent character building and the relationship that was made with him and Ellie. The final scene is one of the most impactful moments we get from this game. All we need are the two main characters we've grown to love. This relationship can carry itself all the way to the end, in which we see Ellie doubting when Joel tells her about the Fireflies. He told her that they couldn't find a cure just to keep the truth away from her, but we see that this is not what she believes with the last ever conversation in the game.
I swear.
Okay.
I believe the storytelling in this game was so good that it has clearly went on to inspire other games to either focus more on storytelling or in fact change some of their own characters to make them more fleshed out. This can be seen in 2018's Game of the Year, God of War. The 2018 installment of God of War changed everything we had known about the game series storytelling as a whole. It chose to focus on a small selection of characters instead of a large amount of characters that were shown in the previous game. The story is a lot more personal and shows Kratos as a human being more than a weapon. Instead of having us control him killing large groups of enemies, we now play as him going on an intimate story with his new son, Atreus. Atreus is Kratos' reason for trying to forget his past. He wants to live a normal life and forget what he did. We see him struggle with his own problems and even see him digging up his old life through his blades of chaos. This smaller scale story of spreading his wife's ashes gives us more character development and detail than we ever had before. Barlog, the director of the game, said it himself that The Last of Us was an influence on the new kind of storytelling that he wished to achieve. I believe that The Last of Us was a step forward that brought unique video game storytelling and video game gameplay elements together to make us care about characters more by having us go on more personal development, but even the second game couldn't top what it managed to do. The sequel has been one of the most controversial games in a long time. This is due to the unpopular opinion to kill off Joel. Killing off the fans' favourite character was obviously going to hurt some people, but this was inevitable after his actions in the first game. There was no way no one was going to come after him. This is not where my problems lie. The problem is a lack of a meaningful relationship, as this is what was at the heart of the first game. The newest characters introduced in this game are somewhat forgettable. Some were even just used to be killed for shock factor. The big example of this is Jesse, Dina's old boyfriend, who we find out got her pregnant. He's not developed very well and is instantly killed when he encounters Abby. This is a waste of a character as we get no attachment to him whatsoever. He's used to get Dina pregnant and that's about it. No depth is given to him. The same is done with Abby's friends, the newest character we play as. Manny is used in the same way, killed off for again to make it shocked, and never talked about again after he's shot by Tommy, Joel's brother. These characters in this game feel more flat than the original, none living up to the likes of Bill and David. The first game was a great example of how video game developers could create new and unique spins on the zombie genre and create compelling characters that are deeper than some movie protagonists, simply from the way we control Joel and Ellie. This gives us a new, deeper connection to the characters, and this was done so well that even the second game cannot create a new relationship such as this. To me, the best parts of this game are the flashbacks in which we see Joel and Ellie just after the first game. These moments capture the essence of what made first games so great, and in some cases make me feel like I am still playing the first game. There was an attempt at creating two characters as unique as Joel and Ellie, but didn't get anywhere near as close. From seeing that even the second game couldn't live up to the original Last of Us, I believe that this game was one of the first to create a duo that is so unique to games that even influenced others to change their own stories and compelled them to develop more internal personal stories that would impact players more. This was one of the first games that showed that characters could have morals and become vulnerable to me. Seeing Joel become more human again through his care of Ellie has been and always will be one of the best character arcs in any game. A relationship so great that even Naughty Dog themselves struggled to tie up and create something even better.